Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dive Talk Plus. Today we have Achim and Juan as
Hi.
guests,
Hello.
and as usual, we're gonna bring up a topic, and you guys have no idea what I'm gonna ask. So this is just like if they're sitting with us, having breakfast at Denny's, like we did this morning. And you ate a lot of toast today. Like that was a new record, I felt like.
True.
Jesus. So anyway, we're just talking about diving. And one of the things I wanted to ask you guys, because I feel like in the Inner Space Explorers YouTube channel, which by the way, go and check it out and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I feel that you guys talk a lot about expert level stuff. Like you answer the questions that people like me and other technical divers want to know from you. So I want to actually go back all the way to the beginning. I'm going to ask questions that a brand new open water, brand new diver would ask. I don't think you guys answer a lot of those. So the first question, I guess, is, if you're a brand new diver, you will probably identify with this, is what's up with the whole deflate to go up thing? How's that a thing? Like instructor says, like, you need to deflate to go up. How does that make any sense?
Well, I mean, if you inflate on the way down because the water pressure compensates your lung and your BCD and all the gas. So basically you start to sink faster because your buoyancy is decreasing. So you inflate to stabilize yourself and become buoyant, neutrally buoyant. And when you go back up, obviously that gas is expanding, which would actually accelerate your ascent, which you don't want because you want to be in control. So you deflate your BCD and let this excess gas that expands out of the BCD, so you can maintain neutral buoyancy and very slowly ascend to the surface.
Yeah, so the idea is to prevent an uncontrolled ascent.
Exactly.
It's being on top of it. It's being proactive so that you're not just a passive client in the ascent.
Right, it's not an elevator button.
No.
Oh, okay, cool.
Well, it is an elevator button, but you don't want to use it.
You can do anything once. Okay, so the second question is, when you're a brand new diver and you go out on a boat to dive, typically the dive planning, which we do as tech divers, we plan our gas and we really think, our decompression. But when you're a brand new diver, all they tell you is be back on the boat at 500 PSI. That's the entire gas planning of an open water diver. So if I'm a brand new diver and I want to be more proactive about my gas planning, what do I do? How do I do it?
Well, the thinking with an ISE is just a different one. I mean, generally when you talk to people about gas planning, they plan for what they want to do. So you want to go on this wreck at, 20 meters and spend a certain amount of time there. And you're like, is this tank enough? Yeah, that works. And this is within my no decompression limit. Most people don't even think about that because they have a computer and they rely on it, which is mistake number one in my opinion. And then, as you said, be back on the boat with 500. So they plan for something that they can control, and they do an estimate on something they can't control, which in my opinion is wrong. So we do it the opposite way. We say, okay, what's the worst case scenario on that dive? The worst case scenario on the example I just brought up is you're on 20 meters with a partner and one of you guys loses his entire gas supply for whatever, blown O-ring, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's the worst case scenario. So how much gas do I need for these two divers that are stressed out a little bit to make a safe ascent? Safe ascent means you do not use the elevator button and go back up because you already have a problem. So you don't want to add another one by a too fast ascent.
Yeah.
So now I calculate that, which is a very simple thing, or you can talk about that in a minute. And I come up with a certain amount of gas that I need to reserve for this worst case scenario. So now that may be, given the tank size that we have, let's say an 80 cubic feet tank, that may be, 80 bar or 1,000 something PSI in that cylinder. And then I know, okay, the remaining gas I can use for the dive. So now I cross-check, is that enough for what I want to do? So certain depth, 20 meters, 3 bars, let's say 15 liters per minute. So how many minutes of potential dive time do I have left to do this dive? And if I come up as that's completely acceptable for me, then I can do it. Otherwise, I either need to adjust my dive plan or I need a bigger tank.
Right. So you need those two to be, to match, right? Your dive plan needs to match your gas supply.
Yeah.
If you don't want to add more gas to a more demanding plan, then you need to adjust your plan. Like
exactly.
if all I want to do is bring an aluminum 80, which is a 12 liter, I guess, that's all I want to bring, once you do your calculation, you have to figure out, well, maybe that's not enough,
Yeah.
so adjust your plan or bring more gas. Either
Exactly,
one.
because that's the portion of the dive that I can control. So that's why I think about it before and then I adjust it to my needs. The
But
other
if you're
thing
a
I
brand
can't
new
control-
diver, you don't know how do I know that I can be there for 20 minutes or 30 minutes? Like, I don't know that.
But that's simple math.
Okay, but so what's the math if I'm a new diver? I don't know anything. I don't know what my sack rate is. I don't know. Like, what do I do?
Well, if you're a new diver, you did some sort of training, right?
Well,
So, so if that training was good, so to speak, we don't talk rocket science.
Yeah.
We talk a couple of simple numbers that you should have in the back of your mind. Like we always calculate with a sack rate of 20 liters per minute on the surface. And that already has a certain safety margin because,
Yeah.
come on, 20 liters per
Yeah,
minute.
yeah.
So, so you calculate with 30 liters if you're stressed out.
yeah,
Times 2 because it's 2 divers.
yeah.
You know you're on 20 meters, it's 3 bars. So it's simple.
Yeah, and I think the best advice for new divers is to know your sack rate. Like, go through that exercise and set it. That way you know
Yes.
how many liters do you normally dive. And typically the way you do that is you go to a specific depth, let's say it's 10 meters or 5 meters, whatever, and then you swim for like 10 minutes straight. And you don't want to like stay there like you're not moving. You want to make it realistic. So
Right.
you're swimming, you're whatever, and then you know how much gas you breathe within those 10 minutes, and you can extrapolate that to any depth and any length.
Yeah.
So by you knowing how much you breathe under normal conditions, then you can add that safety margin by doubling it up or 1.5 it or however you feel comfortable,
Right.
and then you'll know how long you can stay down with your tank. That's
Yeah,
the idea.
Exactly.
I mean, the whole concept is called min gas for us, right?
Right.
Minimum gas?
Yeah, minimum gas for us, which always kind of like Achim said, it takes into account that most challenging condition where the worst case scenario can happen, and you have to be able to remember that is the safety margin that you
Yeah.
plan for, that you do not want to use. So that's your reserve gas, so
Right.
to speak.
Makes sense. And by the way, computers that are air integrated also do a good job at estimating your sack rate too. At least some of them do. I know Shearwater does. But the other question is, I watch ISC, I know my sack rate, I know my planning, like I got that under control. But I just went on a cruise and I got paired up with some guy that I don't know if that guy has a good sack or bad diver. There's a lot of people that go on boats and they're like, I have all these scars. I was a Navy SEAL. I do. And then when you're diving, it's a different story. So how do you gauge whether you can trust your buddy? How do you prepare for it? Like if they run out of, I'm just trying to figure out, you have some random dude. How do you prepare for that?
So there's a video on my channel. It's called "The Most Difficult to Find Piece of Kit for a Good Dive is the Dive Partner." And
Somebody.
generally, I'm not a big fan of diving with somebody that's like paired up because, the dive partner is somebody that you should really be able to trust. So
Right.
normally that's a person that you know on land for a while, that you know you can trust. Meeting somebody on a boat and 2 singles, check, that's a dive pair.
But that
is
happens a
something-
lot.
I know, it happens, but
Right.
it's not ideal from the beginning. So obviously, you have time before the dive. So you talk to that person, you try to figure out as much as you can about that.
So what do you ask a person to try to gauge if you can trust this person in a
Well,
5 minute
first
boat
of all,
ride?
you always have a certain gut feeling. You meet somebody, and you either click somehow or you don't. That's the first. The first impression counts in every aspect of life. You meet somebody, and yes or no, right? And then obviously you start asking a little bit about the background diving.
For me, you listen to the stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Do
that's
you?
where you can gauge it,
I wonder if it's useful to know. For example, like, do you dive often? When was your last dive? Things
Yeah.
like that. Information that is
Yeah.
beyond like how many carts you have.
Absolutely. Obviously, the cards. You want to know what training that person had before, and sometimes you can also figure out if that was a credible organization or an instructor. Maybe you know that person
Yeah,
or that
that's just
organization,
hard.
so you have a little bit
Yeah.
of an idea if that is valid or not. And as you say, how many dives do you have, and was your last dive? Where do you normally dive? Are you familiar with this type of diving? Somebody that dives only in warm, clear seawater, and suddenly you meet that person on this cold, nasty lake somewhere up in Germany. That's probably not a good start.
Yeah.
So that's the normal things, and then you start to try to match you're diving together, I mean, it starts with things like, how do you plan your dive? I mean, how much gas do you bring? What's your emergency plan? What's your backup plan? How do you do your gas calculation? Look, I'm doing this. Also, like going through the equipment, like we dive the long hose system. Somebody that never seen that, obviously you want to explain that.
Yeah. And I feel like if you do that, the other diver kind of feels like I need to level up. Like this guy is serious. He takes it seriously. He's prepared. I need to prepare too.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that I do in boats, and I don't know if everyone does this, but I remember watching this video of Daniel Negreanu. He's a poker player, and he was saying that he likes to watch the table even when he's not involved. Like if I'm not playing the hand at all, I need to watch. And he talked about picking up a tell from a guy once who was chewing gum, and during like an all-in, he stopped chewing gum. And then he got called and he was bluffing. So he kind of made a point in his mind, like, okay. And then in other hands, the guy was just chew gum, go all in, and didn't stop. So subconsciously, he's like, okay, so he was bluffing when he stopped chewing. And then in another hand that he was in, the guy went all in, he stopped chewing, he called him, and he was bluffing again, and he caught him. So long story short is I watch people on the boat before we are even close to going for diving.
Yeah.
If they're all over the place with their gear, if they don't seem to be familiar with how a boat works and stuffing stuff underneath you, like preparing for the dive, I'm watching all of that. I'm not telling anybody, but that tells me a lot. And we do this at the meetup, the Dive Talk meetup. We get paired up with new people all the time, which I enjoy. You know, it's like, if this is your first dive, I want to be your buddy type of thing. Like I seek people that are brand new, but I am watching. I am watching how they prepare. I am watching how they're getting ready for their dive, and that tells me a little bit about what to expect.
It's definitely a tell, and that's definitely key. Like, I mean, listen to their stories, see what their behavior is like, before the dive, during the briefing and so on and so forth. See how they are when they talk about diving with other people and what their adventures are like. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other things that you can see is, especially when they start putting their equipment together, sometimes they don't even know which way the tank should face. These are all like little signs.
They don't do their checks. That's another one, or even attempt to do a body check. Even if you just got paired up, like you should body check each other.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I mean, honestly, like when I go on trips sometimes, and because, I mean, the three of us know this, because we show a certification card and let's say it says instructor.
Yeah.
And let's say it says rescue, right? And then they pair you up with somebody who they know might need some babysitting, so to speak, right? So it becomes work. But then at the end of the day, I mean, it's a responsibility that we all take. But then, the first few minutes of the dive, kind of try to make them at ease, and then try to get some singing together, and then when you can establish that in the dive, hopefully it goes on over the course of the trip, and then you get better as a team.
Do you talk about also, like, what do you like as a buddy? Like, do you prefer for me to stay behind you, next to you? Like, I don't know how much information you want to exchange.
That's a good one. Body positioning is something, especially when we take new people, the expectation is usually like, fine, I get this guy, he knows, so I stay behind him and just follow him, which is terrible for us, because you're constantly like, where is this person?
See a life.
So I very strictly brief, we are shoulder to shoulder, so you're on my right side, on my left side, whatever is better there. So for example, when I'm diving with somebody that is new and we're diving on a wall or so, I want him between me and the wall, so in case I can get easier control instead of having someone in the blue water. And I insist on that. So if that person falls behind, I go on shoulder to shoulder. So and I explain it like passive light communication. So you have a light, I have a light. Lights should be somewhere there, so I see your light. I don't have to always look where you are, because I see your light moving next to mine, stuff like that. But you need to brief it, because normally people have no clue about this, especially if they're not technically trained. But when you explain it, it also makes things easier, and a lot of people appreciate it, because they see, there's something new, and that makes diving easier and more fun, instead of turning around and getting out of the flow of the dive every minute and are you okay, which I personally hate like
that
crazy.
will be the next question is, I notice a lot with new divers, and that was one of, I was one as well, just asking constantly, are you okay? I'm okay. Are you okay? I'm okay. What do you think is like a best practice for that? Like, how, I'm a brand new diver, I don't know a whole lot of etiquette. how often, how much are you okay? Am I asking?
I'm a big fan of passive okay. So
Okay.
because I've seen people literally giving an okay sign and freaking out like 10 seconds later. So they were obviously not okay because this is so much in
Maybe they're
us,
asking,
so
am
to
I okay
speak.
to freak out right now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
something like
okay, go.
okay. And
I like it when you ask for their gauge.
yeah, and
Yeah,
they
they
give
say,
you
"Oh,
very good example. It's
How
true.
much air? I'm
So
okay.
I
All right,
usually
fair
really
enough.
teach when I meet somebody that I haven't dived before. I talk about signs and how I want people to respond. So if I tell you we go up, you don't give me an okay sign. Yeah, we go up. It can be okay. I understand what we go up, but you need to repeat the sign, right?
Yeah.
Or yeah. What's your pressure? I mean, either you show me
What's
your
your
pressure gauge, or you first. And then
No,
I
you
want
hang
I want you to give me numbers. Is the thing. A lot of people don't understand the way we count,
and
like
they
1,
don't
2, 3,
necessarily,
4,
yeah,
5,
yeah,
and then 6,
yeah,
7,
Yeah,
8,
yeah,
9, 10.
yeah. The one handed,
So
yeah.
you explain that to them, and I mean,
Communication
make-
is key.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, before, during, and even after the dive.
Yep.
So I think if you establish that, you're on a good step forward. Right. You're on the good first step in order to be able to dive properly together.
Now, we've been talking about what can we do to make sure we have a good buddy, like the kind of communication and questions to ask. How do you extrapolate that to an instructor? What are some of the questions and things to look for to know you have a good and competent instructor?
That's an interesting one.
yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, I think it's super hard for somebody that is not in the sport yet
To know what to ask.
to really figure out if this person is serious or it's scam.
You have to ask around.
Unfortunately, there is a lot out there that should
Yeah.
not teach.
Right. I like it when they
So-
disguise it as in like, well, I do that because it's easier for the student. We put them
Yeah.
on their knees because it's easier. It's not that I don't know how to be in perfect trim and buoyancy myself. It's I do it for you.
I mean, definitely, I think before you start talking to that person that you may consider to be your instructor, you need to ask around and
Yeah.
get like reviews from other people and get
That's
a bit
tough.
of a feeling. Yeah,
That's tough because again, in the vast majority of cases for recreational divers, you sign up for a class. Let's skip the open water class. Let's say you pick rescue or you pick deep diving or whatever. You literally don't know who your instructor is
Yeah.
until you show up on day one for class.
yeah,
No idea.
yeah.
So they'll say class starts on Friday at 5 p.m. You show up and oh, you're my instructor. Okay, nice to meet you. So it's too late. Are you already paid and
Yeah.
shut up? What are you gonna do?
I mean,
I feel okay. So here,
it's a bit hard for me because I've for decades not been in that position.
I get it, but so what I'm saying is the most realistic scenario here is you paid for your class to
Yeah.
some random shop, and perhaps the shop has some good reviews online and stuff. You pay for your class, you show up to your class. Now, how do I figure out if I should really care about this instructor, if I should really trust what they're teaching me? Like, okay, it's too late. Maybe you lost your money because you paid it and the instructor is crap, but how do I know?
Most probably afterwards.
At the very least, they should follow the standards of the courses.
Okay.
Yeah, you should prepare yourself as that. Yeah.
You had a video that discussed this a little bit about standards, right?
Yeah.
Across the agencies, and most of the agencies have really good standards written out. It's only sometimes the instructors don't necessarily follow them.
That's
right?
true.
And because they shortcut, because they want to sell the quick class, But then at the end of the day, that at the very least, they should be following the standards of the agency that they're teaching.
But that you find out during the class and not up front as well. So I think
Yeah,
it's really
yeah.
hard up
It's really
front. And what you just said, like you pay the shop and then you figure the instructor. That's something where I come from. That normally is not the case.
Wow.
Because you don't have that huge diving infrastructure. If you go to the Florida Keys and like every second house is a dive school and they have like 10 instructors, I completely understand.
Yeah.
But in Germany, like if you find a dive school, I mean, normally it's the owner that runs the dive school. It's not like they
There's
have
no huge
10
demand
people
like
that
in
they
Florida.
throw on their student.
Yeah.
When I have inquiries about people who want to take a class but are not ready for an ISE rec class, I would definitely find instructors for them.
Okay.
You know, so it's
So
something also
referrals.
that, yeah, referrals. It's a good way to get them off diving on the right fin,
Yeah.
so to speak.
How do you guys feel about the people that are like the overachievers? Like, I'm gonna go and be rescue by next week and an instructor by next month.
Yeah, I mean, you have that a lot, but I mean, that simply doesn't work. I mean, we don't, you can't do that with IC. We have no back-to-back classes.
Yeah.
We ask for a certain amount of dives in between.
Right. I get it, and that's the responsible thing to do. But as we know,
Yeah.
most mainstream agencies don't. Like,
Yeah.
it's blatantly obvious that they're trying to sign you up for more classes to charge you more. I mean, when they tell you you can do open water and advanced open water in the same weekend, I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's outrageous that somebody after a
terrible.
weekend of diving is considered an advanced diver.
Yeah.
No.
Insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
nonsense. I mean, that's when I recommend our BUE and which is a skill refinement class, and it's
Oh yeah,
the
you're
easiest
advanced.
way
Okay,
to
well then you should nail this class, right?
exactly
Yeah.
come in, show me, and I mean, then
Come here and show me.
normally you bring these people down to back to earth in a
Yeah, sometimes
within
you
a
have,
very short
sometimes
time.
you have to
Yeah.
also kind of manage their expectations or what they think they should be.
Yeah.
You know, so you kind of like have to slow them down in a sense and emphasize that experience is also still the best teacher, and people have to recognize that. You can read all the books you want on diving,
Yeah.
but that doesn't make you a good diver.
Yeah.
You know, you have to spend time in the water.
I think that the challenging thing here is that diving, like other skills, there are people that are just good at it from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like they seem to just get it like
Sure.
super quick. They're in good trim and buoyancy. They're reversing, frog kick. Like it took me forever to learn it. You can learn it in an hour.
Yeah.
Like there's people that are really good at it. So I feel like in a lot of cases, the instructors are the best gauge of whether you're ready or not. I think the challenge is that there's a lot of instructors who are not even advanced divers themselves, telling people they're advanced divers, and also instructors that are driven by selling you more classes and not honesty.
Yeah.
I've had stories about instructors telling some people who have problems clearing their mask to take rescue courses so that they can improve.
Yeah.
And how
Wow.
often do you hear that? Sad.
You can't even clear your
Sad
mask.
to
You
say,
should
right?
rescue people.
Yeah. That's exactly what I say, right? Why are you taking a rescue class?
Jeez.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what other things are important for brand new divers. I mean, we cover a lot of them. Is finding good instructors.
Finding a good mentor.
Yeah, finding good
mentor.
mentors are
That's,
important.
that's an important one in my opinion. Find somebody that is experienced that you can trust and dive with these people.
And
Gain
somebody,
experience
Yeah.
under somebody's wing.
somebody who has your best interest in mind.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true. So I'll wrap up with this final question. What do you think is a red flag when it comes to diving with someone else? Like, what are some of the things they would do or say that would make you be like, I know I drove 2 hours. I know I paid $100. I know I've been through, I've been waiting for this trip for 2 months, but I'm not diving with this person.
When that person tries to convince you to do something that you're not comfortable with. Group pressure for me, and I
Is a
recently,
big thing.
yeah, I recently did a video for my patrons about this, about a body recovery that I did, and yeah, group pressure. That, in my opinion, is one of the worst things in diving that you can have. You have a group of people, males specifically, and
Yeah, we can do that
and
dive.
everybody's like 3 people, and everybody knows for himself, this is probably not good. But if the other 2 go, I go as well, and each of them thinks the same.
And unfortunately, the camera died, but here we're back in the studio, and we have Woody to answer the same question. I don't know if this is the first video that we've done together for Dive Talk Plus. It's always been like you interviewing somebody or I'm interviewing somebody,
Oh, that's true. No,
Which is-
maybe some early ones. I don't know.
which is pretty funny. But anyway, so if you heard the question that I asked Achim, we were talking about earlier, how do you spot red flags in your instructor? Like, you show up for a class, what are some of the things the instructor can do that you're like, okay, I need to get out of here, or I should reschedule my class with someone else or whatever. But sometimes what happens is you're already certified, you're out there, you're going on a dive trip, whether you sign up with a shop or you're on a cruise and decide to go for a dive trip, or you go to a resort and there's a dive shop and you want to go for a dive. What are some of those things that your dive buddy can do or say that will immediately raise this red flag that you're like, I can't dive with this person. I'd rather not dive, right? So Achim was mentioning peer pressure. Like if they're putting peer pressure, like, yeah, we can go to the props in the Spiegel Grove with 32% nitrox, dude. Don't worry about it. Like if they start putting pressure on you, that's a red flag. I'm not comfortable. Like you can back out. But what would you say? What are some of the things that people can see on their buddy that they will be like, no?
Well, it's actually happened to me, so I know that I don't want to dive with this kind of person. And it's the person that, in my case, it was on a liveaboard, so I had the advantage of learning about them and keep hearing the things that were concerning me for more than just the 15 or 20 or 30 minutes or 1 hour boat dive out of fairness. And the entire time, almost to the point of like insecurity, this person was one-upping everybody.
Oh, yeah. I've done that.
No matter, you only dive with 30% nitrox? Psst, dude,
Come on,
there's
bro.
not. Or, you only dive with one tank? I don't need this. I don't need that. I've done this. I've been there. I've been this. Every single
it, I've
thing
done it.
anybody else said,
Right.
they've done better. They've done more. They know more. And that is a huge red flag. Meanwhile, that person literally was unbelievable, had a full-blown panic attack at the surface and of the bragging person,
Yeah.
where their wife was out of air and died and had to be resuscitated, and this person never reached over and orally inflated their BC.
Yeah.
So the wife kept sinking and basically drank water, whereas all he had to do was reach over and orally inflate.
Yeah. We
So-
talked about this on one of our very, very early episodes on Dive Talk. I'll link it up here so people
So
can see.
if you're on a dive boat and the person just is
Bragger.
I'm the single greatest thing ever to exist in diving, you may want to dive with the person that's really not saying very much at all, just getting ready or more concerned about you or interested in the kind of diving that you like to do.
Yeah. But
I'd
there's got to
pick
be a
that.
balance. So like you've done a lot in diving, right? So
Well-
you show up to a boat, all right? You show up to a boat and somebody doesn't know you from Dive Talk or whatever, but they ask you, it's like, oh, how long have you been a diver? How can you talk about yourself without sounding like you're bragging?
I mean, it's a balance. It's just a natural conversation. I mean, just be a normal person. Thank you for asking. I mean, I have been diving for a long time. This is the kind of diving I do, but I'm excited about diving with you now, Gus. We're out here. We're in an open water dive. We're going to do this wreck dive today. So tell me about your diving. Like, I quickly turn it around because if I really am the experienced one, I kind of need to hear more about you than maybe you need to hear about me. So it's a way of knowing maybe I'm the more experienced diver, but let me learn quickly about and then makes them feel really good, right? Like, I'm excited to be diving with you. Tell me about yourself. Yeah. And then it shows that you really care about them. So it doesn't come across as egotistical. That by the way, is also the sign of a good instructor. A good instructor should want to know about what you want to learn and why. What are you going to be diving in? What gear are you going to be diving in? What configuration are you learning in? Or what's your goal? What you want to become, a wreck diver or a drift diver or a cave diver?
Yeah, I'm typically pretty quiet, I guess, when it comes to that stuff, like talking about what I'm capable of or what my experience or whatever. And sometimes he has paid in big dividends in the entertainment department, because sometimes you go out and like you're on a cruise or something and you start talking to somebody and they start bragging about their experience, and those are always the best. They'll be like, oh, I'm a rebreather diver, stuff like that. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. What unit, and like I start asking them questions, and then you realize that they're like brand new or their class is coming up, or when they start asking you questions, they're like, oh, you kind of know about rebreathers. How do you know about rebreathers? And you're like, well, and then you tell them what you do. It's like, I'm a rebreather cave diver. Then they're like, well, I haven't done a rebreather in 5 years, but like that's when they start like backtracking. I've always thought that that's highly entertaining, and I'm never leading with like, oh, I have this YouTube channel or whatever. Like it was funny. Like we were a Ginny with Achim and Juan the day before this video was recorded, and these guys were going in. We're like getting set up, in the staging area before you go down the steps.
Yeah.
And these two guys were going in, and they're talking to each other or whatever, and the guy says, dude, "You look like Gus from Dive Talk." He tells me, and I'm like, "Oh, I get that a lot." I told the guy, I'm like, "I get that a lot," and he's like, "Do you know who I'm talking about?" I'm like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Yeah, you look just like him." I was just telling him. He's like, I was just telling him to his buddy. I was just telling him that you look like him, but he's much bigger. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of that before."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Are you guys from Dive Talk?" And I'm like, "I am."
That's
The
hilarious.
the guy was like, "Oh, see that?" And then they started talking, and we took some pictures and stuff. It was pretty cool. But
But I think it's
normally don't
important. I think
brag
it's
about it.
important to keep, the more experience you get, the easier it is to forget where you came from, forget how you learned, and forget about what you enjoyed about the people that you learned the most from. Because if you start just letting this ego start creeping in,
Of course. Yeah.
it's just going to continue to destroy diving. So I'm all about, it's important to have good technical fundamental skills, but keep it in check and know why you're doing what you're doing, and know that you need to be welcoming to everybody. Everybody started at the beginning. Nobody was a rock star when they first put on a rebreather and they started swimming around in side mount, right? They all had to learn, and you had to practice to get good. So just kind of keep that in mind.
I think that's a key word that you said, welcoming. I feel like the people, when I think about like all of the great people that we've had the fortune to dive with and train with and all that, one of the things that makes them great is that part, welcoming.
Yeah.
And I feel like, especially in social media, the people that are most vicious at attacking and criticizing and hating on people that they don't even know, that are not welcoming at all, are typically terrible divers.
A lot of times it
Terrible.
turns out to be that way.
Yeah. They will be criticizing online or whatever. It's like, "Oh, you couldn't do this. How come you couldn't do that?" And I'm like, "Dude, like, I've seen you dive. You shouldn't be talking too much right now. I saw you quitting your first dive, crying, right?
In particular,
And
one in
now you're
particular,
here.
crying,
And now you're
literally.
here pretending to be this macho guy who does everything right. Come on, like, take
I
it
don't
easy."
know why this-
And
I
I
don't
don't
know
I
why
don't
it's
call
happening.
people out publicly like that. I have this philosophy I've mentioned that I don't take hate personally, because I just don't accept criticism for people that I wouldn't go to for advice, right? If I wouldn't even ask you for advice, then your criticism is not affecting me personally, right? That's why all this hate is kind of like, who cares? But the funny part is the people that are the most vocal, the most hateful, are typically mediocre divers. It's weird.
I
And
guess
those
it's an-
greats, they are humble and welcoming, and they don't feel the need to be criticizing people, even though they're in a position to do so. They just don't.
Yeah, and even the so-called greats, I really do keep everything in perspective. You can be a great diver doing the kind of diving that you enjoy doing. Doesn't make them greater diver than you. This is Woody's view.
Yeah.
If you are, I like to dive in South Florida. I like to keep it no deeper than 100 feet and just drift dive along reefs. That's great. That doesn't mean that they're greater than you are. It means that they work every day or every week on doing what they want to be great at, which maybe is cave diving, maybe it's doubles, maybe it's passing tanks. That's, to me, you're not a greater diver. You're greater at the skill that you learned to master because you had a reason of why you wanted to have that particular skill. Now, there are certain fundamental skills that we all should try to have in check for diving.
Yep.
But what is a greater diver? What is a great? Well, it depends on what are you doing and what's the environment and who are you diving with. For me, the greatest divers are the ones that really care about their buddy, especially people who don't have as much experience as somebody else. When you are there taking care of that person while they're diving and focusing on helping them, you're the greatest diver that I've ever seen. I don't really care about that you are also an unbelievable master cave diver if you're not in that environment at that time.
Right.
It's just, okay, good, great, you do it every day. I guess if I did, anybody that does something every day If
Be
you're
good at
not
it.
great at it, then frankly, that's a problem, right? I mean, so the fact that you do something every day and are now great at it is actually your average, because that's the norm. I mean, imagine if you dove every day cave diving in your configuration. Just imagine every
Be
day,
amazing.
or 5 days a week, 4 days
Yeah.
a week.
We'll be homeless, but it would be great.
I mean, you won't eat, but you'll be amazing
Right.
at that.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So just keep it in check.
Absolutely.
I don't dive every day on anything, so I'm not great at any diving.
I think that, you mentioned what makes a diver great and all of that, and I think we both can agree that Ed is one of the greats. And you had a great conversation with Ed about DPV training, and I'm going to leave it right here. I hope people enjoy that the two of us are in Dive Talk Plus. Maybe we'll do this again.
We should. Maybe we can interview some people together. That'd
Yeah,
be
yeah.
nice.
That would be
But
great.
that was a great conversation, and he had some really, really great points in it. So enjoy.
See you on the next one.